How's it going, guys? Is the 328i reliable? That's a very common question. We'll set you up right there. A very common question I get a lot. And here's the thing. We're talking 328e90. Now, other countries didn't get 328 or 528 or nothing 28. And a lot of people don't know that. When they go to European countries and even many other countries didn't get that. Everything was 325, 330i, M3, and that was pretty much about it. Now, real quick, in some European countries, you also had the 320, 316, 318, and those Euro-only four-cylinder engines. A lot of those had a lot of issues. But as far as the US 328, I guess it applies to E90 or E46. I would say they can be reliable. Now, you know, they have a lot of issues, especially with the E90s with electric water pumps and this and that. And we don't have a 328 E46 sitting here, but we have a 528 E39, which has the same engine. And there is a lot of issues. Can they be reliable? Well, that's debatable. And as you guys see me before work on the E39s, we had the 530, the 528. It's essentially the same engine, except the displacement is slightly smaller. Now, you know, on the M54 engines, if you're going from a 325 to a 330i, you get the bigger intake, the throttle body's bigger, throttle body boot is bigger, all that kind of stuff. And even the 328 has a different DISA valve than the 330 and 325, and so on. Let's move on back to the E90 here. So the E90, you have the same water pump as 330, 325, and that's expensive. It's just like really anything else. You can have extremely expensive parts as Van solenoids, as you guys just seen, the water pumps and etc. Now, one thing that also associates with 328i is XDrive. A lot of you guys don't realize this either, that most countries don't have XDrive besides in the X5s and X3s. And a lot of the X3s are not XDrives either. So there is that. Now, once you throw the XDrive in, these cars become increasingly more capable in bad weather, but increasingly more parts hungry, we're gonna say. We're gonna say parts hungry. Unreliable, I'm not gonna push it that far, but you know, this car right now has issues with the CV axles. All the XDrive stuff, if you have a 328, there's about a 50-50 shot it's gonna be XDrive. CV axles are not cheap. All the XDrive cars like to eat up the front drive shafts. You guys heard me talk about this a lot. You have to also then change the fluid in the front diff, the transfer case, and of course the rear diff. Everything has a rear diff, obviously. You just have more, right? More. And ordinarily, the 328 is spec'd in between a 325 and a 330i. And what I mean by that, usually have like a modestly spec car, right? So the difference on the E90s, this one has iDrive, where most of these E90s don't. And usually it's only on 330s in other countries, right? If you can even find it then. But here we get the 328 with the iDrive, and just like this car has, this is actually a 525, my bad. This one's spec kind of weird. But on 528, you could get an options with or without HIDs and all that stuff on these E39s. And the same way with E46, you can inspect with or without the halos, depends on what year it is, and so forth, where usually that's only reserved for 330i's in later years. So it's kind of a crossbreed, really, from a 325 to a 330i. And a lot of you Euro guys are seeing, well, this car is a sunroof. It has laptop sitting on now, but it has a sunroof. That's not normal spec for Europe either. Every car here has a sunroof. Every one. They all have sunroofs, right? And that's something else. You can spec those without sunroofs here. It's not very common though. So there is a lot of options. And you see well, first of all, here in the States, you have everything has wood grain trim on the dash. Everything. This car don't. This car is spec'd with aluminum. You say aluminum, I say aluminum, whatever you're into. And that's another option. You see these spec'd a lot more with that, like as you would a 330, right? But still here, like I said, most of that's always spec'd with wood grain and so forth. Now, as far as M-Sport models, here you don't see a lot of M-Sport models. You do see some 328i stuff with spec'd with M-Sport bumpers, M-Sport wheels, M-Sport grills and seats. You don't see hardly any 325s, and you see a fair amount of 330 stuff here spec'd with that. And same way, you know, same way with the 3-stage intake manifold. You can have a 328 spec'd with that. But then again, I've seen 325 spec'd with that too. But that's more or less uncommon. So I guess what I'm getting at here, is it more reliable, or is it reliable to have a 328? I guess so. It's not really a question of reliability at that point. Even though that's what everybody wants to know, it doesn't really come down to that. It comes down to whatever you want, what kind of specs you want. As far as the engine wise, it's basically the same thing. We could even flash 330i tunes on these cars to make them essentially the same power too. Now, there's one other thing I want to talk about is Euro spec cars newer than 2007. Can't see anything, it's all black, right? Back up a little bit. Euro cars newer than 2007 usually don't get spec'd with N52. They get spec'd with N53. We don't have N53 here. It just does not exist here in the States. We get some junk called N51. That's a California only, similar to the old M56, which we swap the valve cover into that, which doesn't work correctly. And we use those in 2011 here in the States in California. So all of our cars here have N52 up until essentially 2011. So N53 is more of a crossbreed. N53 is more of essentially a N54, so direct injection without the turbos. So it shares the high pressure fuel pump, it shares the big injectors like N54 has, and it shares basically all the problems the bigger engine, higher horsepower engine has without the horsepower. So that was kind of a crappy deal. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to get that in anything, but that's usually not the case. Usually you don't get that in Europe or anywhere else. That's only a United States situation. So when you guys see me do the plastic valve cover swap and you're like, that's where mine doesn't even have that. Well, that's why. So, and I want to touch a little more on that PCV issue. You seen the last video, we did the swap with the plastic valve cover, the PCV built in. A lot of you guys are like, oh, I don't even understand. Mine has it under the intake manifold. Yeah, so if you have a metal valve cover in 52, so 06 and 07 engine, then you're going to have the PCV or CCV under the intake manifold. So there is that. So it's a very complex weave of nonsense BMW did, making cars for only American spec, only for Euro spec, and so forth, and many different submodels of this and that. And, you know, just like the 7 Series, there you guys in Europe get 730, 735. You get the diesel in the 7 Series. Here, it's only 745 and 750, and that's it. And if you don't like it, tough, you're not getting anything else. I'm not really sure why they've done that. The whole thing doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, I did see in the newer 7 Series, and what was that, 2012 and newer, you could actually buy a 740. You guys remember the old 740 in the E38 body style, had the V8. Well, the 740 newer body style does not have the V8. And it actually had, well, I don't remember. N55, I believe. I believe it was N55. But at any rate, it wasn't a V8. I was shocked to see that. So that kind of struck my interest a little bit, maybe for a future car. But they're not very cheap, and they're plagued with problems. I don't know, maybe for the videos, maybe that might be an option. We're still looking on that. So I have a couple questions for you guys real quick. I'm thinking about buying wheels and tires for this car. And possibly for this car also. I'll tell you, this is my ideas on this. This car's fate is undetermined. It's a really good car. I think about just going a little further with it, doing the wheels and tires on it, but it kind of has the wrong trim too. I don't know. I think about possibly building it out and putting it up for sale on the channel or wherever and just seeing. So that's another question. What is a good E39 worth? I really don't know. Might be a subject for another video. There's a few things you have to take in consideration. Like I said, we're looking for something pretty much every day here on Craigslist and on Facebook. As soon as something different pops up, we're gonna go for a little different. I'll go grab it. We'll have some awesome videos to make on that. But right now, we're just kind of hovering around, getting a few things done here that need to be done while the weather is somewhat okay. And yeah, so I guess expect a different car coming up shortly. So that's pretty much gonna be it for today's video, guys. Now, tomorrow, we should have Van solenoids in for the E90, so we'll do a video on popping those in. We'll go ahead and reset adaptions on those one more time. I may not do a video on that, but that'll finalize our E90 if that's gonna be totally fixed. So at that point in time, we gotta make some decisions on it and so forth. That's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I don't know, it's kind of a weird video today. Hopefully you got some insight on 328 and 528 and why the US has them, why everybody else don't, and are they reliable, which is kind of a trick question, to be honest with you. All right, guys, we'll see you very soon. Talk to you later.